I'm Anissa now from Moscow with a special edition of the show. A story never told, an atrocity against children, a cover-up, and survivors' strength. Today, Canada's Duplessis Orphans are in the now. A horrendous crime against children that almost no one knows about. It reportedly took place in Canada and lasted for 2 decades, starting in the 1940s. The atrocity bears the name of this man, Maurice Duplessis, the governor of Quebec at the time. His apparent corrupt deal with the Catholic Church opened a gruesome chapter in history Canada is still refusing to acknowledge. 300,000 children became victims. Babies taken from young mothers or kids taken mainly from poor families by Catholic institutions. The majority of them were sold to childless families or on the black market. The price varied from $40 per baby up to $25,000. The rest, who bear the name of Duplessis Orphans, were sent to psychiatric hospitals. Quebec authorities and Catholic orders receive government funding for each child treated in a psychiatric facility. Torture, slave labor, electroshock, beatings, drugs, sex abuse, lobotomies. These children were subjected to the worst things imaginable, while the government and the church made money. A lot of children died, and the way they were treated after death was no better. In 1999, a mass grave was discovered, 6 boxes with over 2,000 human remains. It was dubbed Pigsty Cemetery, located next to a pig farm, which raised horrific speculation that pigs might have eaten some of the orphans' remains. Reports suggest dead children were also sold to medical schools for autopsies at $10 per body. I spoke to a survivor of this shocking policy, Duplessis orphan Clarina Duguay, and her husband and activist, Rod Viagnou. Rod, some horrific events unfolded decades ago in one of the most civilized countries, and almost no one knows about it. We, my team, were shocked to discover this. How is that possible?
Okay, the first thing I must mention is that the aging survivors still carry the false mentally retarded label, which is heavy on their shoulders. This hasn't been yet repaired. This hasn't yet been erased from their medical files. So what happened? The Duplessis Orphans case is a Canadian genocide. More than 100,000 Duplessis orphans have disappeared or murdered. The Quebec hospitals were under the rule of the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, and the CIA. The Duplessis orphans were used as human guinea pigs for medical experimentations like MK Ultra. And like you were saying, every time that something came up that in the newspapers or television, either the media would ask the cardinal, like Cardinal Jean-Claude Turcotte, who just died not too long ago, or some like the Minister of Justice, and the next day, or they would answer right away, they would say, okay, we will look into the case. And then the people in Quebec thinks, well, okay, these are authorities, they will look into the case, but then it just goes silent, and it turns always into a massive cover-up.
Clarina, this must be so difficult for you, but I have to ask you to please take us through what kind of experience you had as a Duplessis orphan.
Moi, j'ai eu des bains d'eau glacée en cause que je pleurais pour ma mère. Je voulais m'en aller, je voulais pas rester là. Puis ils m'ont mis la camisole de force, puis ils m'ont mis sur des lignes de spring, ils m'ont ôté le matelas, puis ils m'ont couché sur des lignes de spring des sœurs de la Charité du Québec. Ils ont torturé moi puis ma sœur, Simone Duguay. Ouais, la misère.
I see this is very hard for you. If you're able to, tell us what it was like to live in a psychiatric hospital and not have a mental illness?
Ben moi, c'est parce que ma mère, ils ont dit, ma mère, elle se mourait de tuberculose, puis mon père, il savait pas lire ni écrire, puis il suivait sur le prêtre, puis le curé du village, puis le médecin, pour placer ses deux petites filles, à cause que la famille, il y avait trop d'enfants, puis il dit, ils vont être bien placés dans un orphelinat de Rimouski. Puis moi et ma soeur, j'ai resté 2 ans là. Les soeurs m'ont maltraité. Après ça, ils m'ont envoyé, quand j'avais eu 11 ans, ils m'ont envoyé dans un hôpital de psychiatrie parce qu'il y avait besoin des filles pour faire faire des choses, laver les planchers, puis laver les affaires de la cuisine, là. Mais moi, je voulais pas parce que je pleurais pour ma mère, puis je voulais aller trouver ma mère. Puis là, quand ça, la religieuse, le soir, elle m'a embarqué dans un bain de l'eau glacée, puis après ça, elle m'a mis la camisole de force. Encore, je pleurais trop pour ma mère, je voulais m'en aller chez nous. C'est pour ça qu'ils m'ont torturée. Excusez-moi.
It's absolutely understandable. You take a break with us. Thank you so much for sharing our story. I do know it's difficult. Rod, I understand that when you two met, you had no idea what Clarina had lived through. Tell us about how you discovered her story.
Yes, we were married for 25 years. And when this came out here in the 1991, 1992, and this was splashing all over the media, television, newspapers, and everything, one day my wife says, I am one of them. And I said, one of them who? And she says, what is talking? They're talking about the Duplessis Orphans. She says, I'm one of them. And from that day on, you know, we had a hard time, the whole family. And then after that, I decided I was just going to try and get justice for her and for her sister Simone. And I decided, and when checking out the case, there was 20 more in my city, in my little city, Joliet. There was 20 more of the orphans. And I noticed a lot of them were digging in the garbage cans and everything to pick up pop bottles and cans to sell. Kids that have got no education, never had education, and they were cruelly tortured. And my wife was sexually abused by one of the nuns. And she was saying that they had strapped her on a steel bed with a collar around her neck and ice cold baths. And this was the same and worse for a lot of them. Because we have the Quebec ombudsman, Daniel Jacobi, who stated right in Parliament, he stated that the orphans were tortured and they were chained and whipped, ice cold baths, sexually abused, sodomized, straitjacket, put in cells for years, and experimental drugs, you name it. They've done everything to these defenseless children.
Why has no one been held to real accountability? The Catholic Church, the government, with all the information that we have? Because, ma'am, there's so many, and still today, some are still alive. So many high-ranking people that were mixed into this here. Doctors, ministers of the Catholic Church, people in government, in Parliament, were mixed into this here. If you don't mind, I can name some, and I don't mind. I can, the one premier of Quebec, Jacques Parizeau, and then come along Premier Lucien Bouchard, who's still living, and then another premier, Bernard Landry, who's still living,
and they are mixed into this case here. And then you got a Minister of Justice, Paul Béjean. And yeah, so they colluded. There was a together collusion, corruption.
What about the Catholic Church, Rod?
So
what is the Catholic Church in Quebec had to say to these accusations?
They are staying silent. Every time someone spoke to them, they just said the orphans do not deserve any acknowledgements, no excuses, nothing, no pardon, nothing. Because the Catholic Church had received from Maurice Duplessis, the Premier, they had full control of the education, hospitals, schools, orphanages, everything. And because the Premier had found out that, he mentioned one day, he found out that the government of Canada, the federal government, was paying $2.50 per head per day for a patient in a psychiatric hospital. So he decided to mention one day, the Premier did, that Quebec had no more money for orphans in an orphanage, which they were paying 70 cents a head per day. So he gave the power to the church, and they just started emptying all the places, every place, and they just started filling all the psychiatric hospitals to be able to get this $2.50 from the federal government.
What about the Vatican? I understand in your activism you've obviously tried to contact them, tried to get response from them. Have they commented?
Yeah, Jonathan Levy from attorney Jonathan Levy had started writing letters. He started getting a word from them. There was a communication and from them. And then all of a sudden there was one letter stating, could you give us please a delay of time? I think it was somewhere like that year, till the 15th of October. And so it was giving them like a 2 or 3 month delay. And they said they would get back to him. But then all of a sudden we noticed that the ex-Cardinal Jean-Claude Turcotte of Montreal, who deceased not too long ago, and Cardinal Marc Ouellette of Quebec, they took off to Rome. So so maybe the Vatican, the Vatican must have said, okay, what is this? Who is the Duplessis Orphans? So they were called in over there to talk about this, and they must have told the Pope, forget it, don't write no more, nothing, just stay silent.
When we come back, we hear more about the fight for justice for Canada's Duplessis Orphans. Stay in the now.
Marine Le Pen has a sort of problematic claims in what she claims for, which is leaving the euro, which is anti-Muslim, which is, also the father was even more problematic. It's a clear radical party about xenophobism and so on and so forth. So we should be concerned if the biggest partner country of Germany, which is the classical Franco-German tandem, is now infected to such a degree by populist vote. It's really sort of infiltrating into the middle classes, and I think that is a European problem also because we cannot look at France in an isolated way.
Самое главное – страх перед человеком. Если этого нет, выпускать медвежат на волю нельзя.
На лугах маки цветут.
Сколько сантиметров? 7 наверняка, да?
7,5. А в горах песни поют.
Не бойся, медведя там нет. Иди, забери медвежат.
И цветок наших сердец.
Выскочил медведь, кинулась прям под ноги, не хватило буквально нескольких сантиметров.
Приходи, гости, привет.
You're in the now, and today our special on Canada's Duplessis Orphans. Now we hear how one woman managed to run away from a childhood hell created for her by the Catholic Church. I want to ask you about your escape. How did you manage to get out of there alive?
C'est ma soeur qui elle était à l'école ménagère, puis de là, elle s'est sauvée dans un train. Puis quand elle est arrivée chez nous à Gaspésie, elle a dit à mon père puis à ma famille que j'étais dans un hôpital psychiatrique de sortir ma soeur vite parce que là, ça faisait... Moi, j'ai rentré à l'âge de 11 ans, je suis sortie là à 17 ans et demi. C'est grâce à ma soeur qui a déserté, qui a pu me sortir de là à l'hôpital psychiatrique. Puis c'est mon père puis mon oncle qui il a écrit une lettre aux religieuses. Puis les religieuses, la supérieure, elle m'a dit de me préparer, qu'il m'a renvoyé sur le train. Puis rendu sur mon oncle William, bien c'est là que j'étais contente de sortir de là. Je n'étais plus capable. J'avais trop de souffrance, je souffrais trop. Puis j'étais heureuse que j'étais partie de là. Parce que sinon, là, si ma soeur n'aurait pas déserté, je serais encore là aujourd'hui.
Tell us a little bit about the years after, before your husband found out, and that moment when you escaped. I mean, what is it like to live the life after being a Duplessis orphan?
Ben moi, quand j'ai rencontré Rod, j'ai tombé en amour avec lui.
Mais avant ça, parti quand tu arrivé en Gaspésie.
Ah, OK, OK. Quand j'arrivais à Gaspésie, ben là, j'ai resté sur une de mes tantes. Et puis là, j'ai commencé à faire du ménage là. Puis j'ai dit à ma tante, moi, quand je vais pogner 18 ans, je m'en vais à Tcherneur, travailler sur une madame, Louis Rail. Et de là, ben, j'ai resté 2 ans là. Puis là, j'ai pris le bord de Montréal. Puis là, j'ai commencé à travailler des manufactures, puis d'aller machine à boutons, machine à boutonnière. C'est rien que ça que je pouvais faire. Je n'étais pas instruite, je n'avais pas l'instruction. Puis moi, mon rêve, c'était hôtesse de l'air. Puis j'aurais eu l'instruction, j'aurais aimé ça faire ce job-là. C'était mon rêve à moi. Puis j'ai pas réussi en cause, j'avais pas l'instruction. Puis à Montréal, ben c'est là qu'après ça, au bout d'1 an ou 2, ben, j'ai rencontré M. Viano, mon mari. Là. Puis c'est là que ça a commencé, là. Mais jamais, jamais je n'ai parlé à mon mari de les choses qui ont passé dans mon enfance. Jamais. Puis quand ça avait sorti à la télévision, j'ai dit « Oh non, c'est pas vrai ». J'ai dit « Comment on va faire ça à dire à mes enfants? » Parce que j'ai eu 6 enfants, puis je savais pas comment le dire à mes enfants. Puis quand ça sorti à la télévision, j'ai dit à mon mari « Il faut que je leur dise à mes enfants. » Parce qu'ils vont dire « Ma mère a été dans une hôpital psychiatrie, ça n'a pas de bon sens. » Fait que j'ai eu de la misère à expliquer à mes enfants. C'était dur pour moi, madame.
But you did do it. Your children do know now.
Bon moral, puis j'ai pu traverser ce chemin-là, madame. Ben, quand je les ai appelés, mes enfants, je voulais leur parler, leur expliquer pourquoi que j'avais été dans un hôpital psychiatrie, parce qu'à la télévision, ça avait sorti à la télévision, puis j'ai dit « Oh non, c'est pas vrai ». J'ai dit « Comment je vais faire pour dire ça à mes enfants? » Puis quand j'ai appelé mes enfants, je les ai mis autour de la table, j'ai réexpliqué tout ce qui m'est arrivé, puis tout ça. Puis un de mes enfants, ils n'ont pas été mis ça. Il dit « Maman, ils sont méchants, les religieux, d'avoir fait ça à vous. Et tu ne méritais pas ça. » Puis j'ai eu de la misère à les expliquer. Il fallait que je leur dise, parce que de manière d'une autre, ils l'auraient su pareil en passant à la télévision. Il fallait qu'on passe devant les journalistes pour expliquer notre affaire quand on est arrivé, tous les orphelins du Duplessis. Il fallait rencontrer les journalistes puis compter un peu notre histoire. Là, j'ai dit, moi, leur expliquer avant qu'ils sachent par d'autres.
So journalists in Canada, Rod, were initially interested in this story once it was uncovered, let's say, in the 1990s. Is that correct?
Yes, they were, yes. Every one of them, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, not so interested.
Well, they were told. They were told, I'm just going to mention something. There's a woman that we know. She stays maybe 25 miles from where we stay. And somebody broke into her house, and she's in a wheelchair. and she was in the same hospital as my wife, Clarina. And so the television, she got in contact with the television, and she said to them, get in touch with Rod Viano, and you know, he will explain more and this and that. So anyway, this criminal guy, this guy who works on criminal stories, from the television called me this maybe a few minutes before the interview started, and he said, Rod, he said, listen, you the only thing we're going to authorize that you can mention that Noella Doucet is a Duplessis orphan, and that's it. He said, if you say just one word other than that, he says, the television will close down. And this is a huge television station, major.
Have you ever been contacted
this is what we're fighting against.
The government?
I met I think every premier, everyone. I have documentations, I've got pictures, newspapers, whatever, stories. I wrote over thousands and thousands of letters throughout Canada to every premier of Canada, the premier of Canada, all his staff members, the ones in Quebec. I've met so many ministers of parliament face to face, and each one of them seems, you know, they listen to the story and this is it. They just don't go further in this, because I believe, and you know, like Canada has been pointing fingers all over the world that this country is like this and this country is there and this is going on there. But if we lift the carpet here in Canada, in Quebec, about this case here, which is a Canadian-Quebec genocide of 100,000 orphans who disappeared, probably all murdered. And we have just Bordeaux jail in Montreal, over 1,000 orphans, children. They were locked up. They were so greedy for this money, for federal funds. Not only that in a Bordeaux jail that they had these kids there, but they opened up hospitals across, and they were the proprietors across the United States. Massachusetts, the Bronx, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. They had hospitals everywhere. And they were the sole owners, and they were illegally transporting thousands upon thousands of innocent children across the U.S. border. And it was so easy at the time because of the robe, the nun's robe that they were wearing. And to the officers at the border, well, you know, they cannot commit crimes. They represent goodness, you know. So yeah, and like Clarina was saying a while ago, the doctor from her little village and the priest, yeah. And when they transferred her and Simone to an orphanage, and you know, like the father could not read or write, and he signed with an X, and they told him, your children are going to be well looked after, get a good education, but this was not so. And then in order to transfer both of them to a psychiatric hospital, they made up this collusion that her mother was a psychiatric patient in another hospital, and she had died. They buried her 2 years before her real death. Her mother died at the age of 31 years old in a place close to her home, and we have all the documents. She died in 1946, but the nuns had made up this mystery grave. We don't know. We've been there to that hospital, and they're so they're afraid. I took a picture even of the grave site and everything, and this came out in the Montreal Gazette. It hit the front page. There's huge page. It was inside about the mystery grave. We would like to know who's buried in that grave, and we would like DNA testing done in her mom's grave. The government of Quebec in 1992 they decided to, they asked for a police inquiry into this case. All right. I think they must have thought that there was nothing, but this would put the people to sleep and put the people to ease. So in 1992, the police went around interviewing. They interviewed 240 Duplessis orphans, girls and boys. All right. From this, they accumulated 321 criminal accusations. And I asked myself, the two police, and I have their name and their numbers, and I asked them if they were going to see all the Duplessis orphans. They said, no, we finished right now. We have 240, and we have 321 criminal accusations. They said, once we deposit this at the Crown Prosecutor's Office in Quebec, this will be like a bomb that hit the province of Quebec. But it didn't do nothing, because this is where the Minister of Justice, Paul Bégin, got a bunch of Crown prosecutors, and they started into this case. Everybody thought, the public figured that everything was going on, everything okay. And then all of a sudden, Paul Bégin, on the 24th of February, 1995, he stated that a slap behind the head and twisting of an ear is not a criminal act. But we're not talking about this. We're talking about children that were tortured, that were kidnapped, that were put into cells. And I was astonished and so surprised to see the buildings that they're building all around. They want to hide so much the cemetery where the orphans, where a mass gravesite is. But there is still a place that somebody could dig, because workers found over 2,000 skeleton bodies. This has got to be looked into, and we need help.
Clarina, just finally, I want to ask you, what do you want to see happen in terms of accountability?
Ben, qu'ils reçoivent justice et réparation, madame. Pas des miettes, des réparations comme du monde. Puis des excuses bien qu'il faut. Pas des miettes de pain. On va avoir des excuses puis réparation. Je ne sais pas si je le dis bien, non?
Madam, the Duplessis Orphans, they've got to erase from their medical files the false mentally retarded label. The government of Canada, who was mixed into this here, the Catholic Church, the College of Physicians of Quebec, and the government of Quebec, they must repair this to these children. And they must repair in the right way. And because these children here had their lives stolen, they could have been lawyers, they could have been doctors, they could have been anybody. But they didn't have this chance. Without no education, and they're still carrying this heavy on their shoulders, this mentally retarded label. They've got to repair this case in a good way.
All right, Rod Villanou and his wife, Clarina Duguay, of course, who was a Duplessis orphan. Thank you both so much for telling your story. Clarina, I want to say your story is heartbreaking, but your strength is so much more powerful. Thank you so much for being in the now, both of you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
We contacted the Canadian Prime Minister's office and asked them to comment on the allegations and claims of this horrendous crime, but so far, nothing. Let's hope that justice prevails and you do your part in trying to help tell this dark side of history so it's never forgotten. Use the hashtag #DOJustice and spread this story with your comments. It's now or never.